And so if you really want to get out of that, if you really want to get out of it, you need to start taking accountability for the content you consume. And this goes all the way back to this goes back to how we are conditioned, right? The conditioned beliefs we have. We are so conditioned from a young age to not take full accountability for everything in our life. For example, in school, you are made to do certain things. You're not allowed to do other things. Do this and continue to do it. And if you do it, you are good. If you don't, you are bad. And so for years and years and years of conditioning, you are told what to do in life, where to go. You're told what to do by your parents. You're told perhaps go to university or get a job. What happens when you leave home and you are now in your 20s and you don't have anybody telling you what you need to do? Suddenly, you're like, oh shit, there's nobody to tell me what to do. And that can be confusing for people. And I think people can move in.
Honestly, like, I'm just going to say it, man, that was actually possibly the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
And the worst thing, not just that, but being unprepared for it by your parents or by anyone.
Yeah, no one prepares you for that moment, right? It's like it's like the first, 15 to 20 years of your life are meant to prepare you and educate you, but they are not preparing you and educating you for that one important component, which is self-responsibility and accountability. And I think people go in one of two ways. People either work it out, go in sort of the right direction, get that self-accountability. But another issue is, and a lot of people fall into this, is they lose it. They distract themselves. They might do drugs. They might do anything to hide from the fact that they don't know. And that really scares them. Like, they don't know where they're going in life. They don't really know why they are in the job they are in. 80% of people, I think it was a survey, said that they were not satisfied with the job they were in America. 80%. That is crazy to me. 80% is so high. That's almost everybody. And so you've got people that are distracting themselves. They don't really know. They're afraid. They're scared. How do you fix it? How do you resolve that? And it's about really taking that accountability that you didn't have or that you were never taught. And that's going to be really scary, but it is so necessary to do, because you're going to have to figure it out sooner or later.
You're by the way, just so you know, your philosophy is very existentialist. So they would say, actually, this is the perfect moment to interject their concept of what they would call existential angst. Their version of angst applied in this context actually makes perfect sense. So say, again, going back to the cliff example, you're at the cliff. There's nothing forcing you to fall off the cliff or jump off the cliff, but there's nothing holding you back either. You're seemingly in this kind of position where they would call you have absolute, complete freedom. They think of freedom radically. They think of freedom very excessively. Sorry about that. This is how existentialists, this is how they view freedom, right?
Oh, okay.
So, and this example is bringing out this kind of like, I could fall off the cliff, I could jump off the cliff, I could hold back off the cliff. Like, there's this infinite set of possibilities here. And the perfect example of actually, and this is what they call existential angst, of where this actually applies, is exactly the context that we were just talking about. With that moment where you're kicked out of home or university is finished and you're out in the big wide world out on your own, and you have no concept of. So this, I'm adding to your concept of responsibility and accountability. I would add in this existential context, the concept of freedom as well. You have no sense of your own power, your own freedom, on what is actually possible, because it's not even occurring to you how free you are, how radically free you are in this sense to decide out of an infinite set. And that angst, but that angst is generally what people feel, though. That angst is what people feel. Like, I could go to university, I could go to this city.
Too much choice, right?
Yeah,
Too much choice.
It reminds me of the modern dating market. So much choice. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And that's sort of what existentialism is a little bit about, is about responding to that absurdity and to that meaninglessness. And they respond like you do, in the sense of, they say, because there is no inherent or intrinsic meaning to any particular action or any particular outcome, or to the universe as a whole itself, they say that you create it. That's what you do. But that's part of what I would say is the freedom here that no one recognizes they have at that age. Imagine at that age, if we knew about freedom and we knew about responsibility, if we knew about those concepts. So, like, to me, you know what? They're like two, like, if you think of the, even the Christian, but the Hindu as well, they have a version of God, which they conceive as a trinity, as triune. So God is one being, but he's multiple persons. So for me, freedom and responsibility are like two co-eternal equal powers of a Godhead. You know, they are. If I knew about those concepts specifically at that point in my life, at that age, life might have gone very differently.
So do you think knowing is sufficient, or do you think something else is more necessary? Because you have so many options, as you mentioned, and that can be scary for people. How do you best go about working out what option to take, or feeling comfortable with the fact that there's so many possibilities? Is that something you just need to spend more time with, or is there some way that you could perhaps get there a lot quicker?
This is where I would say this comes back to what you said earlier in the conversation, but also in another conversation we've had. This is where you kind of just have to jump in, and you just kind of take that leap of faith.
Right.
Not going to cover like the existentialist version of that, but it's like right now, you, practically speaking, have your experience-o-meter is now 0 at that point in your life. Like, yes, of course, obviously, objectively, you have a collective set of experiences from the age of, let's say, 0 to 21, right? However, you have no experiences of having complete freedom and complete responsibility. You have none. And so in that sense, your experience-o-meter is reset to 0, to zilch, so zada, to nothing. And you need to go out there and you need to jump in and collect those experiences.
I would also argue that although you said that you by the time you, for example, in your 20s, you have all the possibilities, but I would say I would almost argue that you probably are also in another paradigm. So from university, then you go to work, right? And once again, you are in something, you are in a structure, a 40-hour week where you are being told what to do. So suddenly your autonomy and accountability is taken away from you. Your power is taken away from you from at some level. Right. And you are giving up, or once again, not practicing being able to choose and decide and take full accountability for everything you do. Sure, you can do it to some extent at work, and that can be beneficial. You could be doing great things at work, but once again, you are not doing it for yourself. You're being told what to do in the overarching vision. And I think that is the more important factor. And it's the fact that you are serving a company or serving somebody else's vision. So you never learn to create your own vision because you are so used to somebody else's version or purpose, wider purpose. You could have a mini purpose within it. Like, I want to become really good at programming. I want to do XYZ. But that wider, larger purpose might not have, you might not have sufficient, what I call freedom to really create and express that, because you are limited by possibilities, you're limited by fear, you're limited by other people around you. And so you don't have that complete freedom until perhaps you make a plunge or make a decision. Even outside of that, because of that, you might spend a lot of time distracting yourself on Netflix, on YouTube, whatever. And so you aren't creating a purpose-driven life where you are deciding, hey, I want to pursue something that's meaningful. And that's because you are so used to not doing it that you don't know that you should be doing it. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Most people don't understand the concept of this radical notion of freedom that I'm referring to, but they do have an inkling of what you and I mean when we refer to like responsibility, accountability, and duty. And that's because reality in this sense is objective. Reality is the objective force of coercion that actually, and this is a pretty great epiphany as well, that will decide for you even if you don't decide. Reality will determine the outcome for you unless you sort of integrate yourself into reality and make that choice for yourself. So if someone in the ideal situation, of course, they would realize that responsibility is going to come either way. Whatever path I take, even if I select no choice, even if there's no option I make, there is going to be that responsibility that comes on me. Why? And this goes back to an earlier conversation as well, because you can't just do nothing, in the sense that ultimately your world around you will crash, and that will force you to go down, even if you're the worst person in the world, to go to social income and ask for assistance. And then when something goes wrong with that, then you have to go back and you have to keep doing even these small little things. Reality forces you, if you want to live. And of course, the majority of humans actually want to live. Fortunately, there's suicide, but in the case of majority of humans, they want to live, so they're going to do the smallest thing they have to get by. But the ideal situation here is someone who knows about absolute freedom. They take this leap of faith, and they also are aware of the consequences. Right? They are aware of the incompetent responsibility and accountability that will come no matter what path that they take. But as you said, I do agree with you in the sense of like freedom eventually, especially if you basically, I think that's really, what every man in a sense is sort of working to build. He's working to build that empire, so which it is set up into a situation, into a position to when they've taken so much responsibility that now they're more on the 60-70% of side of responsibility, and now they have 30% freedom, and they can do whatever they want with that freedom. So practically, as you said, pragmatically speaking, that's the reality. That's the two co-eternal gods, the two co-eternal powers of freedom and responsibility. The group of thoughts that's leading us to believe, at least right now, let's say that there's no objective purpose to life, that there's no objective meaning, and that you create that meaning. Now, arguably, I can also philosophically go in circles with this all day as well. For example, we could say, well, then if there is no inherent purpose or meaning, then what about self-creation? is that not then the ultimate inevitable outcome of a universe that has no purpose and meaning, and thus in its own right an objective sort of purpose and meaning?
That's the issue I have with a lot of philosophical people, is they get stuck, right? It's like they go in circles, and I'm like, oh man.
But these actually, it's useful. Like, I know people don't like philosophy for this reason, because these circles do eventually lead to good utility.
Yeah,
they really do.
Yeah,
and it's the same sort of mindlessness of thinking that also led to us to like these scientific endeavors and scientific enterprises. And just even sometimes a lot of scientific discovery is by accident as well. Like anyway, that's a whole nother subject unto itself. But that's ultimately, so with respect to, going back to that. So at this stage, I think that we both agree anyway, that self-creation, a sort of imputed meaning into the world around us, into the world that we see and perceive, is what we're doing. And because that is our framework right now, then we're going to have this stage in our life, as I predicted, where we have this this decision of infinite possibilities. Now, does that have to be, as the existentialist claim, does it have to result in angst? It might feel that way, but for you and I, and for like at least a mutual friend I know, they view possibility as like divine, or like it makes the world alive. It makes the world mysterious. It makes life worth living. It's kind of like knowing, it's like kind of like not knowing when you're going to die, so to speak. It's like not knowing what is going to happen, what is the potential outcome. And that's also, in a sense, what makes a human, that absolute freedom when it comes along. But eventually you see also that reality kind of forces all these different niches, all these different fields that we feel like different divisions or categories or fields or subjects or topics. And we kind of, as you might be already seeing, we start seeing like overlaps between everything in all of these fields. So there's like crossover between like dating, self-development, philosophy, engineering, science. We start to eventually you'll see the cracks, and you'll be like, that one. And this is when I think like where you're like, as Peterson would say, that's where you're like, you're closely getting to higher and higher on that hierarchy, because experience is becoming, and those emotions we were talking about before, like maturity and wisdom and all that, they're becoming succinct with who you are. Because it's no longer just about like theorizing and talking philosophy. It's like you are, in a sense, becoming one with that philosophy. The experience is so amazing that you don't even need to, in a sense, basically what I would say it ends with is unconscious competence. That's really the ending, I would say. That's happening here. And unconscious competence on multiple levels. And you're probably at the point where you'll be like, at the end of your life, freedom won't even matter, because you'll just be, I mean, if you take this to the extent that I'm thinking of taking it to in terms of evolution, you've used that freedom to really cultivate beliefs that have led you to the outcome that you wanted. And that's the ultimate evolution, right? That's like who you are as a person. As they say, it's the journey, not the destination. But in a sense, the destination is also the journey, and the journey is the destination. Just this is going to be like philosophical food of thought there. And that's who you are. The journey is who you are, but so is the destination, I would say. And the destination is the journey, and the journey is the destination. Aphorisms